I paid $700 for Easter dinner and got laughed at. So I disconnected the Wi-Fi, took the smart TV, and left my family begging in the group chat. Andrew is my name. I've always been the extra sibling in my dad's second family, and I'm 31. At least that's how they made me feel. His first marriage gave birth to me. By the time I was 12, he had married my stepmother, Denise, and they had 2 children of their own. My mother died when I was 10. From the outside, we looked like your normal blended family. It was like living in a house with doors in every room that you couldn't open from the inside. Every time she saw me, my stepmother would smile politely, but it would end there. From the beginning, my half-brother Ryan, who is 2 years younger than me, made it apparent that he didn't view me as his biological family. Although there were times when she seemed to want to connect, my sister Ellie generally followed his example until Denise looked over and Ellie was cold once more. I learned how to leave that house secretly during my adolescence. My father was passive, but he wasn't mean. Denise would comply if he wanted me to be left out of something. When I pushed Ryan too hard, he would sigh and say, "Let's just keep the peace." I learned early on that I had to earn a spot in this family. I therefore did just that. I earned outstanding grades, worked part-time jobs, and received scholarships to pay for college, and after graduation, I got a fantastic position in technology. When COVID hit, I helped everyone in the family set up home Wi-Fi, got them on Zoom, even fixed Ryan's resume so he could land a remote job. Never once did I hear, "Thank you." I secretly hoped for one, even though I wasn't expecting one. That optimism was unyielding. Perhaps they would ultimately notice me if I did more, showed up more, and helped out more. They would eventually cease treating me like the specter in the group photos corner. I didn't hesitate to accept Denise's request for my assistance in organizing Easter when she texted me in the family group chat. "Could you clean up the house a bit before folks arrive? Would you mind confirming with the caterer? Oh, and the kids really love that egg hunt you did last year." She spoke it so casually, as if she wasn't giving me half the holiday. My invisible job description felt familiar. I still said yes though. Since Denise claimed she would Venmo me later, I made my own reservations for the caterer and paid the deposit in full, which came to around $700. For the record, she didn't. She commented that the tablecloths appeared wrinkled in the photos from the previous year. So I arrived early to cleanse the guest bathroom, arrange the folding chairs, and even iron them. I completed everything while they were away getting manicures or going to the mall to buy matching pastels. I was already worn out by the time people began to arrive, but I still managed to grin. I knew they looked fine in pictures, so I dressed a great button-up, and even those slightly pinching shoes. I distributed baskets, assisted the children with the egg search, and kept track of the candy to ensure that nobody got upset over missing it. With a mimosa in hand, Denise observed from the patio without ever attempting to assist. Nodding absently to whatever Ryan was babbling about, whether it was cryptocurrency, his new sports car, or how 9-to-5 jobs are for losers, my dad grilled outside. I simply kept grinning. We had a buffet for dinner. I made sure the line was orderly, refilled the drinks, helped Ellie carry a tray when she started to hurt her wrists. However, Ryan looked up from slicing into his ham when I finally sat down, barely touching the plate, and smirked at me, saying, "Funny how you think any of this makes you one of us." He laughed as if it were a joke, but nobody else did. As if he hadn't heard, my dad continued to slice the ham. Denise didn't even raise her head. Ellie gave me a quick glance before turning away. Something just suddenly, not loudly, not all at once, broke inside of me. It sounded like the sound of threads separating from a button. A silent, last snap. I didn't weep. I didn't shout. I just sat there for a bit, staring at the dish in front of me, at the roast potatoes I'd helped arrange in a perfect spiral that morning. Then, silently, I chuckled at the ridiculousness of it all, not at anything amusing. It was ridiculous that I had worked for more than 10 years to be seated at a table that was never reserved for me. So I got up. No one noticed right away. I grabbed my laptop bag and went into the coat closet through the hallway. It served a different role today than when I had carried it in case I wanted to make a short work call. I went to the driveway and unlocked my car's trunk. There, I had a clearly labeled folder containing bank statements, signed contract copies and receipts. I took it out. I returned inside and past the dining table. Denise's flawless centerpiece. Ryan's arrogant, hollow smile. I said nothing at all. I went directly to the laundry room's fuse box and turned off the circuits for the media center, outdoor lighting, and main kitchen. After that, I started removing everything that had my name as soon as I left through the front door. I took my time. I wanted to experience every moment of taking back what was rightfully mine. It had nothing to do with revenge. Not quite yet. It was about clarity, the type that settles over you when you stop yearning to be chosen and start selecting yourself. Pulling out the list I had printed weeks earlier but never intended to use, I opened the trunk. Unless they really pushed me. Well, Ryan had done the honors with just one sentence. The outside heater is the first thing on my list. Dad noted that Denise was always cold at outdoor dinners, so I bought it for Christmas last year. I moved it carefully to my car and loaded it in, after using the small wrench I kept in my emergency pack to unscrew the gas line. I was drawn to the sound of the back gate creaking open. Ellie was the one. "Andrew," she said in a careful, low voice. "What are you doing?" I continued to move. "Taking back what's mine." She took a tentative step forward. "Wait, are you okay? I mean, Ryan was being Ryan." I stopped and gave her a direct look. "You laughed last time he told me I should be grateful Dad didn't ship me off to Mom's family. You didn't speak up then either." She opened her mouth a little but nothing came out. I didn't feel upset with her. Not really. She may have once aspired to be decent, but in that environment, being decent meant being different, and being different wasn't safe. Not if you were a child of Denise. Without saying anything, she retreated. I looked at my list again. The surround sound speakers came next. Last summer, Ryan sat inside and complained that I was making too much noise while I spent 2 full days running cables through drywall. He continued to boast to his pals that his setup was superior to a movie theater. After carefully unhooking and coiling each cable, I placed the speakers in the original boxes I had stored in my garage. It was mine if I installed it and paid for it. The security mechanism was simple. I installed every camera, had the admin log in, and owned the subscription. My phone unpaired the network with a single click. Each camera flashed twice before going dark. I removed all the saved video logs while I was at it, just for good measure. Dad finally realized something was amiss at that point. The front door opened, and I heard it. With a half-eaten roll in his hand, as if he had forgotten he was still eating, he slowly left the house. "Andrew, what's going on?" I didn't instantly turn around. I was in the middle of coiling the garden hose that I had purchased. Naturally, theirs had a leak that was left unfixed for 2 years. I responded without even glancing at him. "Taking back the things I brought into this house. I figured it's time I stopped pretending I belong somewhere I'm not welcome." He remained silent as he stood there. Then the indication appeared, that old weary groan he used whenever he didn't want to face something. "This isn't necessary. Let's not make a scene." I straightened up and looked at him. "You think this is a scene? What Ryan said back there wasn't a scene? What Denise does to me year after year? That's not a scene? You've stood by every time she's cut me out of family photos, forgotten my birthday, told the caterer I wasn't part of the guest count. And you said nothing. So no, Dad. This is me finally saying something." Instead of responding, he simply stared at me as if I were the issue and that I was exaggerating. I grinned. "Don't worry, I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to break anything. I'm just going to finish collecting what's mine, and then I'm done." I meant it too. I spent the next hour taking down the patio lighting that I had given 2 years prior. Denise had requested a streamlined device, so she took the smart TV from the wall in the living room. I even took out the backup generator I purchased during the power outage the previous year. I paid for everything. They never expressed gratitude to me for any of the small things they had become accustomed to having. Ellie never returned outside. Ryan made no effort to appear helpful. Denise. She stood in the kitchen window, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She didn't appear irate. She appeared irritated, as though I were interfering with her lunch preparation. I stuffed one last box into the trunk once the car was full. It was the handmade Easter centerpiece I created with porcelain eggs and wood. After praising it to a neighbor once, and describing it as charming, Denise advised me not to bring anything so rustic the next time. Still, I took it. Nothing that bore my fingerprints was left behind. I heard the front door creak open once again as I went in and closed the trunk. It was Ryan this time. He didn't shout. He didn't grin. With a Coke in his hand, he simply leaned on the railing and yelled, "You seriously think anyone's going to miss you?" I gave him a direct glance while slightly lowering the window. "No," I replied. "But they'll miss what I brought." The house shrank in the rearview mirror as I backed out of the driveway. The house I used to imagine I belonged to. The home that had given so little and taken so much. However, none anticipated what transpired after I drove off. And the actual fallout started there. It took exactly 3 days for the first communication to come in. It came from Denise, not from Ryan or my father. It was a brief, antiseptic and frigid text. "Hey, just noticed the thermostat system is offline. Could you check it? The house feels like an icebox." I didn't respond. Rather, I took a screen grab of the message, saved it, and continued with my day. See, what Denise didn't realize, what none of them realized, was just how much I'd been keeping together in that house. My name was on the smart thermostat's registration. The mobile app that let them control the temperature from their phones was licensed through my account. I had connected the devices, configured the Wi-Fi mesh system, and ensured that the router firmware was kept up to date. Ryan was boasting about my work and money every time he boasted about how sleek and sophisticated their house was. My phone buzzed again later that afternoon, this time from Ellie. "Hey, not sure what's going on, but none of the TVs are working. Did you cancel something?" I thought about responding. Ellie was the only one who ever came close to treating me like a human. However, I recalled the numerous instances in which she averted her gaze when Denise made verbal insults to me. The way she laughed hesitantly, yet still laughed, whenever Ryan said something harsh. I owed her nothing at all. Instead, I signed into my streaming service accounts, Netflix, Hulu, Prime, and pushed the sign out of all devices option on every single one. I added two-factor authentication and modified the passwords. The group chat exploded the following morning. Dad wrote, "Andrew, is there a reason all the house lights are flickering?" Ryan sent a message. "Bro, what is this? My Xbox won't connect. Did you mess with the Wi-Fi?" Denise sent a message. "This is really immature. You're making a point. We get it. You can stop now." I didn't respond. Not quite yet. I was not prepared to talk. I did something different instead. The contractor who had assisted me in installing the backup generator the previous year was contacted. Although it was expensive, nearly $5,000, I charged it to my credit card and gradually paid it off. Even after the neighborhood lost power and their house remained completely lit during the blackout in December of previous year, they had never even tried to help. The thank you I never received is still fresh in my mind. I informed the contractor that I needed the unit moved because I was moving. "No problem," he replied. By Friday, he might have someone out. When the electrician arrived, they were still texting. At the door, Ryan attempted to stop him. "You can't just take that. This is our house." However, the documentation was unambiguous. Purchase receipt under my name. Contract for installation using my billing address. As a worker with a clipboard carefully disconnected and placed the generator onto a truck, Ryan stood in the driveway and yelled at him. It was a small gift from the cosmos to see him thrashing around like a child who has been denied a toy. Finally, that evening, I responded. At 11:47 p.m., a single message was delivered to the group chat. "Don't worry. I'm just doing what you all taught me, taking care of what's mine." After that, I turned off the conversation, but the consequences persisted. A week went by. I concentrated on my task. I finally acquired the espresso machine I'd been coveting, remodeled my room, and purchased new furnishings. Life seemed lighter and more peaceful. But then something unusual happened. My father called. Unsure of what to do, I gazed at the screen. He didn't call. He delegated the family communications to Denise or Ellie. Nevertheless, more out of curiosity than anything else, I responded. Then he continued. "Andrew, we need to talk." There was a change in his voice, not irate, not bossy, just exhausted. "What about? I didn't realize how much you were doing for this family," he admitted softly. "I guess I let some things slide that I shouldn't have." I remained silent. Allow the quiet to last. "I was wondering," he said, If you could at least send a new Wi-Fi password. Ryan's been having issues with his remote work setup. I let out a single silent laugh. I wasn't resentful. It was nearly funny. I said, "I'm not your IT guy, Dad. I was your son once." That didn't seem to count for much. He didn't know how to answer. His respiration hitched, and I could hear it. "Is this really how you want to handle things?" "No," I replied. "But it's how you handled things, for years." I hung up after that. I began reviewing my accounts that evening, including those for utilities, insurance, and subscriptions. I deleted my card details from each and every item linked to their address one by one. The water bill? Lost. The electricity autopay? Cancelled. I left the usual service plans with them. No savings, no bonuses. Like everyone else, let them call and wait on hold for 3 hours. That should be the end of it, I thought. However, I got a letter in the mail 2 days later. It's a letter, not an email. Thick envelope, my name printed in cursive. A folded piece of paper bearing my dad's handwriting was inside. It began with, "Andrew, I know I haven't been the father you needed me to be." I didn't finish reading it. Not immediately. With a letter in hand, I reflected on the years I had spent attempting to earn the respect of a family that never made an effort to compromise with me. I was going to tear it up and throw it in the garbage, when I noticed something else hidden inside the letter. A $700 check, which was exactly how much I had spent on the Easter catering. I gazed at it. I recognized then that they were afraid. Not only of losing services, not only because it's inconvenient. They were afraid because I had begun to show them what it was like to be invisible, and for the first time, I had ceased requesting to be seen. I sat for a long time holding the check. The money wasn't the point. It had never been. Compared to the hundreds I had spent over the years on the holidays, technology, furniture, and utilities, that $700 was nothing. Nevertheless, something inside of me paused when I saw it spelled out that way, signed in my dad's meticulous handwriting. It was the first time anyone in that house had tried to pay me back, just a transaction, a figure, and not with any emotion or apology. It was chilly but enlightening because I now understood my exact value to them. $700. Not a second more. The check was not cashed by me. Rather, I went to my kitchen drawer, took out an old envelope and slipped the check and the unopened letter inside. I needed a reminder, so I put it behind my tax papers, not out of sentimentality. A tangible acknowledgement of my progress and my unwillingness to regress. The following week I got a call from Ellie. I didn't answer at first. I let the voicemail go. The following day she gave it another go. Then the following day. Finally, on the fourth call I answered. She spoke gently, as if she wasn't sure if she was permitted to talk to me. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I remained silent. Not quite yet. What she meant by everything was something I wanted to know. "I didn't stand up for you. I let Ryan talk to you like that. I let Mom treat you like help. I always knew it was wrong, but I told myself it wasn't my place to fix it. That it was easier not to stir things up. But I saw how they looked after you left, Andrew. It was like something cracked open. Everything felt exposed. Quiet. Even Ryan stopped talking for once." I have yet to respond. She remarked, "I read your old message again. The one in the group chat. The one where you said you were just doing what they taught you, taking care of what's yours. I think that hit harder than you realized. When I eventually said, it wasn't meant to be poetic. It was just the truth." She let out a sigh. "Yeah, that's the part that hurts." We were silent for a long time, not tense, but honest. She continued by saying, "They're talking about selling the house." I sat up at that. "What?" "Yeah. Dad says it's too much to maintain now. The heating's a mess. The outdoor stuff's broken. And, well, Denise is embarrassed. She had friends over last week and the power flickered during lunch. Ryan lost a freelance gig because the Wi-Fi dropped in the middle of a call." "So," I replied slowly. "Now that things are inconvenient, they want to give up." She didn't dispute. "They don't even realize it wasn't the stuff I took that broke the house," I said. "It was the foundation." "I know," she muttered. "That's why I'm not calling for them." After another pause she said something that caught me off guard. I want to stay in touch. I don't care about Denise's side of the family anymore. I miss my brother. My real brother. For all the years I felt like I was shouting into space, this person on the other side was whispering back, and it impacted me in the chest harder than I anticipated. Softly. Then show me, I said. Not with words. With actions. I will, she said. She did, to her credit. Ellie began to visit once a week. Sometimes she'd bring meals. At times, we would simply sit and converse. At first, we kept things light. Work, novels and random TV shows. But gradually, we delved deeper. She began to tell me about the pressure she was under to be the ideal daughter in Denise's eyes as she grew up. Pretending that all of the dysfunction was normal was so draining. Every time she laughed at Ryan's jokes to keep from becoming his next victim, she felt horrible. I also admitted to her that I had spent the majority of my 20s believing that I just had to do more to win her love. Each time I paid a bill, addressed an issue, or gave them a present, I thought that perhaps this would be the moment that I felt like family. And how I finally realized I didn't have to earn anything by going away. That I had always been sufficient. The remainder of the family, meanwhile, remained largely unchanged. Denise continued to act as though nothing was wrong by sharing filtered photos on Facebook. I was having a phase, she told her buddies. Ryan made a few comments online about ungrateful siblings and drama queens, but he knew better than to tag me. My father made several calls. I let the voicemail go. He occasionally left lengthy, meandering texts. On other occasions I listened, but I never answered. Just a quiet, "Hope you're doing okay, son." To break years of stillness, I required more than voicemails and checks. My former electrician, who had taken out the generator, sent me an email about 2 months after Easter. He informed me that a realtor had gotten in touch with him about installing a new generator at the same residence. He stated, "They're getting it ready for sale. Thought you'd want to know." I did. So one time I just parked across the street and drove by. In some way the house appeared smaller. The yard wasn't tidy. The weather-stained patio furniture. One of the garden statues I had purchased had been overturned by the wind. It had not bothered to be fixed. The front yard has a "for sale" sign. Below is a smaller sign. Price cut. Driven vendor. I looked at it for a while. I finally grasped something. Not because I was resentful. It had been years since the house had been a home. Not for me, perhaps not for anyone. I had finally left the stage, which was all it was. Months went by. I became closer to Ellie. We went on sibling hikes, shared playlists, even planned a weekend trip together. Genuine memories. Created from the ground up. Without flawless lighting, food, or staged appearances. Just the two of us, rebuilding something honest. I finally pulled that check from the drawer. I didn't cash it. I put it in a frame. I hung it over my desk as a reminder that the best repayment I've ever received wasn't monetary, rather than as a trophy. It was liberty. Freedom from requiring their consent, from pursuing their love, from making myself smaller in order to fit within a flawed image. And I came to the realization that the family I had always desired wasn't the one I was born into as I stood in my own place, surrounded by things I had chosen, and people who had chosen me back. After I quit pleading to be included, I decided to construct it. And that was worth a lot more than $700. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. Wife told me to man up, 2 weeks after my parents died in a car accident. Now she blamed me for her cheating because I was grieving. My wife Rachel and I have been together for 4 years. Our relationship had been almost ideal, or so I believed. We have similar interests, such as playing video games and going camping whenever we can. We both have well-paying careers and don't want children. Rachel is highly independent, which is the main reason I fell in love with her in the first place. We dated for 10 months before moving in together. Rachel and I have talked about our past, and she understands how much I despise cheaters. She shared my sentiments and told me how her ex-boyfriend destroyed her heart when she discovered him cheating with one of his exes. I was delighted we were on the same page about this. I enjoy being devoted and available to my spouse, and Rachel was the same in the beginning. However, when we became engaged, something changed in her. One day when we were drinking, she asked if we might have one free pass in our relationship. I didn't understand what she was saying at first, but she went on to explain that a free pass is when you can sleep with a celebrity, or someone you find exceptionally attractive without your partner thinking it's cheating. She asked if I'd ever considered having a free pass in our relationship. I laughed and shook my head, because I had never considered this possibility. I informed her that a free pass is nothing more than cheating, and that if she wanted one, she should leave me. Rachel remained silent as we continued to drink. I didn't think much about it after that day. However, I believe this was the first red light in our relationship. Months later, Rachel approached me, explaining that she had a colleague who was quite gorgeous, and had been persistently asking her out for quite some time. One day, at their office party, she gave in and kissed him merely to silence him. She informed me that she felt terrible about it and wanted to tell me, but her friends had discouraged her from telling me the truth, because they thought I would not understand. My first opinion was that what this person did was effectively coercing her, so I advised her that she needed to report him right away, and that she could file an HR complaint against him since this is a very serious matter. However, Rachel tried to dismiss it, claiming that it was no big issue, which made me suspicious. I questioned her why she told me this if she didn't think it was a big deal in the first place. Rachel informed me that she felt she wanted me to take action and face the guy, as all of her exes had done, and that she thought it was unappealing that I wanted her to go to HR instead. She then complained that I didn't love her enough, and that she would have confronted the woman if I'd kissed anybody else. At this point, I couldn't understand why Rachel was twisting the matter like this. I felt manipulated into a situation that made no sense. How could she expect me to react in the same way as her ex-partners? It was as if she couldn't bear the thought of me handling the problem in a sensible and responsible way. Her persistence in putting my love for her to the test left me with a bitter taste in my mouth. I informed her unequivocally that if she didn't report this to HR, I would presume she kissed the person of her own free will, and not because she was coerced to do so, which meant it was cheating, and I couldn't marry someone like that. Rachel's demeanor changed from fury to disbelief upon hearing this. She inquired whether I was serious and I nodded, emphasizing that I couldn't tolerate cheating. We had an argument for a while, and she kept emphasizing how everyone would look at her differently if she complained about the person and outed him. But I didn't care, and I reminded her that she shouldn't care either if what she told me was true. Finally, she reported to HR, and it appears to have been a major thing, as one might imagine. They ended up terminating the guy and assuring Rachel that she did the correct thing. I was pleased that Rachel stood up for herself. A week later, I received a message from a stranger. He claimed he was the person Rachel had kissed. In his response, he explained that Rachel kissed him with her own consent, and that he had never done anything improper. He claimed Rachel never wore the engagement ring around the office, so he had no idea she was even engaged, and her friends never mentioned it, which is why he thought it was appropriate to pursue her. He said all he wanted from me was to tell me the truth, and apologize for kissing my girlfriend. Obviously, I never responded to his message because this guy had already been dismissed, and I trusted Rachel more at the time. Rachel and I wedded 2 months later at our dream wedding destination. It was a lovely ceremony, and we exchanged vows in front of our parents and the rest of our families. The beginning of our marriage was pure happiness. Everything was going well until I found something incriminating on her laptop. While she was out grocery shopping, my laptop was charging upstairs, so I accessed her laptop to check our travel information, because our trip was approaching. In Safari, under Often Visited, I noticed a Reddit account page that piqued my interest, so I clicked on it without thinking much. This is how I found out Rachel had a Reddit account that she had never told me about, where she exchanged obscene photos with random strangers. I browsed through the photos and noticed that she had edited out her face in every one of them, as did he. Their letters were not lovey-dovey and were entirely sexual, but what shocked me was how openly she shared our sex life with this complete stranger. I was at a loss for words. When she returned, I confronted her, and she was as pale as a sheet when she knew I had discovered her account. I urged her to explain herself because the photographs horrified me. She paused for a time, her eyes flitting uncomfortably before meeting mine, and then she began to speak slowly and hesitantly. She admitted that it was fascinating to send images to a stranger and participate in talks with him, although knowing they were banned. She told me it was just like porn, and didn't mean anything to her. She attempted to excuse, claiming that she had never declared any feelings for him, and that sending images with her face cropped out was not a big problem, because he would never find out who she truly is. I struggled to grasp her thinking, and what was driving her behavior. I asked her why she felt the need to do this, whether it was because she wasn't pleased with our marriage, but Rachel shook her head vigorously, her eyes pleading for understanding as she tried to argue that it wasn't like that, and that this was simply a silly act that meant nothing to her. She kept claiming she loved me and pleaded with me to let this go because it was nothing more than an embarrassing event, and she promised to remove the Reddit account right away. I wanted to shout and lash out in rage and frustration, but I chose to keep silent while I processed this new information. There was nothing else to say. No words could restore the damage that had been done. I must admit that following this, our sex life suffered because I felt misled and upset. I strained to find the desire to be near to her, to let down my guard and become vulnerable again. The thought of becoming intimate with her filled me with fear. Rachel sensed my unwillingness to overcome the gap that had formed between us. She attempted to reach out and mend what had been broken, but her attempts were insufficient. Every time I glanced at her, I could see her messages to the guy in my thoughts, which did not help. Just a week later, I received even worse news. While I was at work one morning, my parents were involved in a vehicle accident and were badly injured. I couldn't believe it. It was as if the ground had vanished beneath my feet, leaving me suspended in a state of shock and sorrow. I dashed to the hospital to check on my folks as quickly as I could. The doctors informed me that they were on life support because their organs were failing. The physicians honestly told me that their chances of survival were fewer than 50%. I remember sitting in the waiting room for hours on end, praying that they would suddenly awaken. Rachel did come and sit by me in silence, holding my hand. I kept hoping frantically for a miracle, some sign of change, but my parents' condition did not improve. My mother was the first to go, soon followed by my father. The only thing that reassured me was that they could die together. I collapsed on the ground and cried till my eyes ran dry. My heart was shattered into a million irreparable pieces, and I had no idea how to continue living after that. The funeral was extremely difficult for me since I didn't know how to remain calm in front of people. I must say that Rachel handled everything throughout this period. She let me mourn the loss of my parents while she made all the arrangements. Following their funeral, I withdrew within myself, cocooned in a shell of numbness, unable to express the extent of my grief. I became stuck in a crushing embrace of sadness and depression. I didn't have the energy to do ordinary activities and would spend the entire day in bed, mourning my parents and upbringing. My parents were my rock, and losing them was like losing a piece of myself. I did meet with my parents' lawyers, who informed me that they had left everything they owned to me, which was not surprising. What surprised me was that the collective asset was $2 million. I was astonished, but it made me sadder to realize that my parents had worked so hard their entire lives, and didn't live long enough to appreciate it. I never told Rachel or any of my relatives about my inheritance because I wasn't even in the correct frame of mind at the time to consider the money. However, I decided to take a lengthy leave of absence from my company. Now that I didn't have to worry about money, and had been a loyal employee for a long time, my supervisor graciously agreed to allow me the time I needed to grieve for my parents. However, only 2 weeks after my parents died, Rachel contacted me one evening and said she needed to talk to me about something very important. We sat down in the living room, and she began to tell me that she had had enough of seeing me mope around, and that I needed to get my ass up and attend treatment. Rachel told me that my behavior was abnormal, and that no one mourns as deeply over the death of their parents. She asked me to toughen up and quit crying. I was stunned by how nasty her statements were, so I tried to explain to her that my pain was unavoidable, and that grieving for my deceased parents for a month is completely normal for any human being. I told her that she had grieved for her childhood dog for months, and I had never questioned her, so she had no right to treat me this way. She was irritated and complained about how unattractive it was to see me cry. There was more back and forth, but she finally let it go. So I assumed this would be the end of it. Recently, my cousin Joseph messaged me to see how I was doing. Joseph and I were extremely close growing up, so it wasn't unusual for him to check in on me. However, he went on to inquire whether my wife and I were currently separated. I was perplexed by his query, and I said that my wife and I were still together. At the time, I dismissed his inquiry as being motivated by curiosity or perhaps care, but he quickly called me, so I answered. Joseph went on to say that he had just seen my wife walk out of a hotel with a man, and that the man and my wife hugged strongly, before walking away in opposite ways. He told me that the way they held each other was different from how friends hug, which is why he had asked if Rachel and I were still together. I reaffirmed that she and I were very much together, and I promised him that when she returned home, I would ask her about it. However, my cousin, being the more paranoid one, discouraged me from asking her. He informed me that it was preferable for me to go through her phone and see if she was cheating on me, since if she was already sleeping with this person, she might not accept it. I hate to admit it, but his statements made sense, given that Rachel had kissed a co-worker and even shared indecent photos with a complete stranger. So I decided it would be best if I did some research before approaching her, which I did. I searched through her laptop and phone but found nothing. There were no inappropriate texts or phone calls to anyone. I was beginning to question my cousin and wondered whether he had confused someone else for Rachel. However, one weekend, while Rachel and I were sitting on the sofa watching TV, I noticed a phone vibrate. I looked around and realized that neither my nor her phones had received any notifications. Rachel must have noticed me glancing around because she suddenly excused herself to go to the restroom. I racked my head in uncertainty, as I was certain I had heard a phone vibrate, and it occurred to me that Rachel might have another phone. When she came out of the bathroom, I noticed a phone-shaped bulge in the side pocket of her sweatpants, which confirmed my suspicions. The fact that my wife had purchased another phone without informing me was suspect in the first place, but now that I knew she had received a message and ran to the restroom, I had even more reason to believe she was cheating on me. However, like the previous time, I did not want to simply face her. This time, I intended to catch her in the act and confront the guy to get his side of the story as well. I spoke with my cousin, who readily agreed to my plan. He told me about the hotel where she met this guy, so I patiently waited around the hotel all week to catch her in the act. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday passed, but she was not seen, so I believed she was meeting the guy at another hotel. Things went well for me on Thursday. I watched my wife enter the hotel during the afternoon, which was meant to be her lunch break, and right behind her was another guy I thought I'd seen somewhere but couldn't place. I waited 15 minutes before going after them. I told the receptionist that I was waiting for a guest. He offered to call the room, but I chuckled and told him it was unnecessary. 40 minutes later, I noticed them exiting the elevator together, their faces flushed with pleasure and expectation. My heart fell as I watched them, knowing what I was about to face. I approached them with all of my remaining courage, my hands quivering with wrath and betrayal. When my wife spotted me, her eyes widened in surprise and she stopped dead in her tracks. Before she could say anything, I held up my hand to silence her objection. I did not need to hear her reasons. I'd seen enough. I turned to the man next to her and asked whether he knew who I was. He nodded and informed me he had seen me at the office Christmas party last year, and thought I was her ex-husband because she had told him we were recently separated. I stared blankly at him as he went on to say that if he had known she was still married, he would never have been involved with her. I asked if he worked with Rachel, and he nodded, indicating that they were co-workers. My anger erupted like wildfire when I learned my wife had once again cheated on me with a co-worker. Without saying anything, I turned and walked away, leaving them dumbfounded. As I drove home, the weight of what I had observed hung over me like a smothering blanket. My marriage had ended, devastated beyond repair by the betrayal of the lady I had loved and trusted above all else. When I arrived home, I immediately began packing my luggage. I was furious and heartbroken about everything going on in my life. Rachel had presumably driven after me, and she walked into the home, gasping and puffing. She discovered me packing my luggage upstairs and confronted me instantly. She admitted that she had made a terrible mistake and pleaded for my pardon. She went on to tell how lonely she had felt, and in her desperation, she had decided to lie to this co-worker about our separation because she didn't want to be known as the cheating wife at her office. She explained that she had wanted to come honest with me for a long time but was terrified of my reaction. I yelled at her to get out of my face, as I couldn't take any more of her falsehoods. I was positive that if I hadn't caught her red-handed that day, she'd still be sleeping with him. Rachel then shifted tactics and began telling me that I couldn't blame her for everything and that I needed to accept this. This was my fault as well. I stopped packing and gazed at her, stunned by her audacity in suggesting such a thing. She went on to inform me that I hadn't slept with her in months after seeing her messages on Reddit, and that this had persisted even after my parents died. I was so enraged that I yelled at her, telling her that she had no right to blame me for her treachery, and that her acts were her own choice, regardless of the circumstances. I couldn't believe she was attempting to shift the responsibility to me, as if my sadness and pain were somehow responsible for her infidelity. But Rachel persevered, her words piercing the air like a knife. She accused me of neglecting her and failing to perform my responsibilities as a husband. She informed me that I had become too boring while grieving my parents' deaths, and suggested that instead of leaving the marriage, I should try to comprehend her point of view. She even insisted that we consider expanding our marriage, and that I was free to date other people if that's what I desired. Hearing her statements, I simply scoffed since I was fed up with this woman. Before leaving, I packed my bag and informed her that I would be sending her the divorce papers. I'm currently staying with my cousin, and Rachel has contacted me 1,000,000 times. Her messages span from apologies to accusing me of wrecking everything. She keeps telling me that I should view things her way and forgive her since she was simply lonely. So here I am on Reddit, wondering if I am the a-hole here. Am I to fault for pressuring my wife to cheat on me just because I was in mourning? Update 1. Wow, when I submitted this, I believed it would not even be tracked. But seeing 300+ comments under my post has been mind-blowing. I didn't think my narrative was particularly intriguing, but seeing you guys debate in the comments has been fun. To everyone who is criticizing me and saying I pushed my wife to cheat by not sleeping with her, well, I hope you never find yourself in a situation like I did. I love my wife and thought she would never cheat on me. But seeing her inappropriate chats with a random stranger affected me emotionally and mentally. I couldn't just dismiss everything and sleep with her like everything was fine. 2 weeks later, when my parents died, sleeping with my wife was the last thing on my mind. It's as if some of you have never experienced grief, because if you have, you will understand that everyone reacts differently, and losing my parents has been devastating. Throughout this, if my wife isn't faithful to me, and would rather sleep with someone else, it's not my responsibility. Yes, I felt bad at first, but after speaking with my cousins and reading some of the comments, I am convinced that this is entirely my wife's fault. She chose to sleep around since that is what she desired. I have no regrets about ending this marriage, and I have already discussed everything with my divorce lawyer, so we will move forward with my decision. I've also spoken with my in-laws, Rachel's parents. They had no idea she had cheated on me since she had neatly left that out, and instead told them I had moved away because I was still heartbroken over my parents. I told them everything that had happened, and they were as outraged with Rachel as I was. They later told me that they trusted me to make the proper decision. Update 2. It has been 5 months since my previous update. Sorry for the delay in updating, but I've been quite busy with the legal aspects of my divorce. I'm here to finally provide a positive update. Rachel and I are officially divorced. During the divorce procedures, that selfish woman attempted to seize my assets, but my lawyer was able to prove that she cheated on me, allowing me to keep my assets, including the $2 million inheritance from my parents. Rachel, who had no idea my parents had left me so much money, attempted to argue that she deserved half of it. However, the judge was not having it and denied her outright. I have wasted no time getting on with my life. Soon after moving out, I met an incredible woman named Sarah on Bumble. She is a wonderful single mother with a beautiful son named Jerry. Sarah lost her spouse a year ago, so she understands the sorrow of loss and grief that I have been experiencing. We've bonded on a deep level, connecting over our common experiences and a desire to provide a happy, caring home for our families. Sarah works really hard, and her perseverance and strength motivate me every day. I also like how she cares for her son entirely on her own. Jerry is a beautiful youngster, full of energy and curiosity, and I've enjoyed getting to know him. I am really fortunate and appreciative that both of them have embraced me into their life. Meanwhile, I've moved out of my cousin's home and found a wonderful condo for myself. I've also returned to my job because I enjoy working there and don't want to laze around the house doing nothing. It's taken me some time to adjust to living alone, but I have to say that I don't mind it. Yes, it can be lonely at times, but being alone is preferable to being with a cheating partner. I've also started seeing a therapist to help me heal from my parents' deaths and my history with Rachel, so that I can focus on constructing a brighter future. I miss my parents every day, and I hope they're proud of me for leaving a poisonous marriage. I know my mother would have been unhappy with Rachel for cheating on me. Also, numerous of you messaged me following my first update, asking me to get an STD test, which I did, and the results were luckily negative. It was a relief to have that peace of mind, knowing that Rachel's infidelity had not put me at risk. Rachel has made multiple attempts to contact me since our divorce, and even throughout it. She has expressed her regret. I've made it apparent to her that I've forgiven her for her previous transgressions, because there's no purpose in nursing a grudge anymore. However, she has also attempted to start a meeting with me following the divorce, and I quickly turned her down, telling her unequivocally that I have no interest in rekindling our relationship. I told her it was time for both of us to move on. I hope she gets this and stops harassing me. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my previous update, and since many of you have asked for one, I wanted to let you know that I recently took the next step in our relationship by asking Sarah to marry me. To my delight, she said yes, and we are now planning our future as a family. I couldn't be more delighted to start this new chapter in my life with Sarah and Jerry at my side. However, this is not the only update I have. Rachel appears to have been tracking me and Sarah on social media following our divorce, which I was unaware of until Rachel attempted to contact me many times the same evening Sarah uploaded our engagement photos. I declined to answer her phone, so she sent me multiple texts, asking if it was true, and how Sarah was just a gold digger who didn't really love me. I blocked her since her communications irritated me, and I saw no need to continue communicating with her. However, this woman then sent me a lengthy email in which she claimed that I had been deceiving her all along, and that I was solely responsible for the breakdown of our marriage. She wrote about how much she loved me, but I had shattered her heart by failing to trust her sufficiently. She chastised me for divorcing her without even attempting to talk things out with her, and she urged me not to marry Sarah, who was clearly not right for me. She commented that she couldn't believe I was back on my feet, and that Sarah would be getting a lot happier version of me. According to her, I was the one who escaped. I was exhausted reading her email because this woman seemed insane, repeating the same thing over and over again. I've blocked her on Gmail, so maybe she won't create a new email address simply to bug me. Looking back on all that transpired, I know that I was the one who escaped, not the one who got away. I'm grateful that I was able to exit a toxic relationship based on lies and betrayal, and that I can now live my life on my own terms with a partner who loves and respects me for who I am. With Sarah, I discovered a genuine, unconditional love based on trust and mutual respect. Together, we are creating a future full of love, laughter, and limitless possibilities, for which I am eternally grateful. To anyone going through something similar, my advice is simple: never settle for less than you deserve. Trust your intuition, and don't be scared to leave a situation that no longer suits you. Life is too short to squander on individuals who do not value you. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.